Yes, good evening. This is Phil Dixon. Good evening, Phil Dixon, here with another edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. And I was away yesterday doing a presentation in a place called Stratford, Kansas. And that's down there by the Great Bend area. I think I mentioned that I was going to be going and doing a presentation. Drove about 3.5 hours away and down by Hutchinson, Kansas, Newton, Kansas. They did this event for the Kansas Humanities, and then I did my thing, and then I got back in my car and drove another 3.5 hours back to Kansas City. Guys, that's what you call dedication, and that's the kind of dedication I've had behind this topic for 40 some odd years. 42. This just started my 42nd year, and guys, I still love it. I still enjoy talking about this topic, and my live presentation is quite a bit different than what I'm doing here, but I still enjoy it, and people still come to hear me, right? So, Stratford, Kansas. One of the things interesting, I talked about a few things that happened in Great Bend, and of course, Oscar Michal is buried in Great Bend, and one of Michal's relatives played on the what quote colored team down in Great Bend. So yeah, it's always a pleasure to go down there. You pass through Hutchinson, and of course that's the area where the Kansas City Monarchs played, and that's kind of called southwestern Kansas. All right. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and jump right in here. And since I wasn't here yesterday, I'm going to go ahead and give you a couple of things that I would have given you yesterday, but I wasn't here to do that. So I'm going to combine the 8th and the 9th. So it's going to be like a double header, right? And 2 days worth of information all into one. So this is going to be a power packed 20 minutes. Okay. So you ready for this? Okay, let's see if we can get going here. Okay, so we're going to start with February the 8th, 1896, going back to 1896. And Walter Dobie Moore is born in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, Dobie Moore was the great Kansas City Monarchs shortstop, joined the team in 1920. Of course, he's with the Kansas City Monarchs till 1926. And then he had the unfortunate accident of getting shot actually in the leg, and it broke the most important bones in his leg, and that ended his career. And guys, I'm telling you, had he continued to play, he would have been in the Hall of Fame. He was as good as Willie Wells, probably better when it went to going in the hole. Dobie Moore was certainly better than Willie Wells. They could both hit, yeah, and Moore could run as well. So Walter Dobie Moore out of Atlanta, Georgia. And of course, he came to the Kansas City Monarchs in 1920, along with Wilbur Bullet Rogan. I think they played their first series in St. Louis that year around July 4th. Hey, and the Kansas City Monarchs were never the same after that. So he was just a great player, and his career was just a little bit too short for maybe to get some recognition in some of the halls of fame. But we certainly don't talk about him enough. Now, if you go to my book, The Negro Baseball Leagues of Photographic History, you can see images of Walter Dobie Moore, the great shortstop from the Kansas City Monarchs, the 1920 through 1926. All right. So let's go to another one. This is a baseball player who's doing a little boxing. So that's February the 8th, 1906. Second baseman Topeka Jack Johnson won a boxing decision versus Jim McCormick at Association Park in Topeka, Kansas. Now, how about this? They're fighting outdoors in the nighttime. How about that? In the 8th round, McCormick bit Johnson on his shoulder in a clinch. And seeing this, the referee ended the fight and awarded the decision to Johnson. And what would happen is a lot of these times, the only way you could win the fight, or say if you didn't want to get knocked out, you're losing. So what you do is you would commit an egregious foul, and that would cause the referee to call the fight and award the decision to the other person. So Johnson obviously was winning this fight, and it's a fight at nighttime in Topeka, Kansas, and so McCormick bit Johnson, And of course, Topeka Jack Johnson is the famous manager of the 1907 Kansas City, Kansas Giants, the year they won 54 consecutive games. I wrote about that many times. If you once again, go back to my book, The Negro Baseball Leagues of Photographic History. You will read that. Now, the first time I heard that was from a guy who actually lived around that time. His name was Fred Langford. And Fred Langford was the one who tipped me off about this Kansas City, Kansas Giants team. He also knew people on the team, and he knew who the boxers were as well. And he talked quite a bit about Bill Pettis boxing. He was the one who told me that Bill Pettis had boxed Jim Flynn. And I'm 20, 23, 24 years old. Man, I was just absorbing that information. And then I did research and made it come alive. And so these are some of the things I've added to this history that typically don't get talked about. All right. So that was February the 8th, 1906. Topeka Jack Johnson gets bit on the shoulder by Jim McCormick. All right. So let's go to another one. February 8th, 1932. Edward Googles, like the website, Poles of the Baltimore Black Sox and Lincoln Giants is shot and killed while attending a dance in Glen Burnie, Indiana, a suburban settlement about 15 miles from Indianapolis, Indiana. So that's another fact. So these are little tidbits of information that help you understand what's going on with the Negro Leagues and players. And these are stories that might have been told had they been white players 100 years ago. But most of you are hearing these for the first time ever. So if you're joining me and you want to know anything related to Black baseball, hey, go ahead and subscribe. That way you'll catch me all the time. But let me know where you're listening from. That's always important to me, and to be able to relate to you, who you are. All right. So we're going to keep it going. I didn't really have a whole lot on polls that I wanted to talk about, but did want to let you know about him being shot and killed. And years ago, I started keeping a record of athletes who had been shot and passed away. And one of these days, I'm going to go through that list and give a lot more details as to why I kept that list and why that list is important. All right. I'm not a person who really likes all this violence, but we need to tell these stories because people, they don't know this. Some of these things have been happening for the last 100, 150 years, right? So I like to bring people up to date and educate you. All right. So once again, if you're joining, by all means, let me know. All right. So here we go. I'm going to go to February the 8th, 1934. And this is another baseball player playing basketball, especially this time of year. A lot of basketball and a lot of information that I've been talking about. I went through the fall there and talked a lot about provided much information about guys who were baseball players playing football. So I'm getting some names that you probably haven't heard of. How about this one? The Hollywood Van Dykes were the original House of David Cagers, whipped the local junior college team by a 33-27 score in basketball action at the Dance Land Gymnasium in Scotts Bluff, Arkansas. With excellent passing, the Van Dykes controlled the game. And Subby Bias, I don't know if you've ever heard of Subby Bias, used to play for Chicago American Giants. He played for the Newark Dodgers. Just a good all-around player. Hey, good guy, too, because I talked to Subby on many occasions, went to his house there in St. Louis. And so he had an off night, and he finished with 1 point for the winning squad. But he was also a basketball player, too. And he went to Wendell Phillips High School, and he attended the school the same time as Ruth Foster's son, Earl Foster. That was his name. So Subby knew Earl Foster very well, and we had some good conversations about that. Okay. So how about this? February the 8th, 1965, pitcher Ray Brown of the Pittsburgh Homestead Grays and a current Hall of Fame inductee died in Dayton, Ohio. Interesting thing, I did interview Ray Brown's widow. So I'm running back to back on people that I actually had some kind of interaction with and I did interview her. Ray was working, and I want to say for some reason I'm just thinking, but I think he was working for a bread company or something like that. But he was in Dayton, Ohio. Now Ray was quite a basketball player as well. I have to maybe I'll find a game where he was playing and did some amazing things. But of course, he was an outstanding baseball player too. Later on, married one of Composey's daughters, and when he played for the Grays, and Ray Brown, of course, uh, he passed away, and in 2006, he was admitted to the Cooperstown Major League Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. So most people know a little bit about Ray Brown if you follow Hall of Fame baseball players. Now, I wonder how tough it is to get his autograph. I've never had one, but I should have asked for one when I talked to his widow. So I didn't wasn't thinking about it. So anyway, those are some things I would have talked about had I been on yesterday. So I just hit a couple of things for today. All right, so let's go to February the 9th, 1971. Okay, February 9th, 1971. Let me adjust my screen here. Let me adjust it. Got to do some adjustment here. All right, so February the 9th, 1971, Leroy Satchel Paige, age 64, becomes the first Negro League qualified player to be inducted in the Baseball Hall of Fame at Cooperstown, New York. And that is reason to celebrate because that was the beginning. Now, what's interesting, Paige was awfully good, but I always wondered about how they were selecting people and how they put this Hall of Fame committee together. And from time to time, I've mentioned who was on that original committee and why they didn't people pick a person like Ruth Foster first or Bud Fowler. Surely the people who were involved with this knew something about those guys, but I don't know what the original intent was. But yeah, Leroy Satchel Paige became the third African American in to be enshrined. Of course, the first was Jackie Robinson, the second was Roy Campanella, and then Satchel Paige in 1971. Right. So I am a member today of the Satchel Paige uh, Family Foundation, and I get a chance to talk to Linda Page all the time. And Linda just has great stories. She's always wonderful to talk to, and she's a good friend. And of course, Paige passed away here in Kansas City, so I knew many people that knew Satchel Paige. Somebody says, I'm from Baltimore, the home of the original Baltimore Canaries. Man, Baltimore Canaries. I know about the Sioux Falls Canaries. I didn't know Baltimore had canaries up there. So anyway, yeah, Baltimore. Now, Baltimore is a good town. Uh, I was looking at my tour schedule from way back in 1992, and I stopped and did a book signing there at a bookstore. It was a black-owned bookstore called Pyramid. That was back in 1992, and then also I stopped and did a signing at the Babe Ruth Museum. And what's interesting is that's been many years ago, and I have not been back to Baltimore since. So we're talking about 92. Man, we're talking about over 30 years. I think I'm past due to go back to Baltimore. And uh, believe me, guys, if you want to see somebody who really knows the topic and can talk about it in ways that no one can, invite me to Baltimore. One of my good friends who I had the pleasure of knowing, Leon Day. I think the closest I was speaking in York, Pennsylvania, which is not too far from Baltimore. And so I invited Leon Day to come over. I think that was about 1990. And so Leon came over. I got them to give him a stipend, and he came over and spent about 3 or 4 days. I was there about that long doing presentations all over town. And Leon came, and we had a great time. Somewhere here, I have his signature on a napkin because the last night, if you've been following me, you've probably heard the story. The last night we were there, Leon was saying he was here all week. He didn't spend a dime on anything. They took care of us so well. And so he said he just wanted to buy me a drink. And so I said, why don't you go ahead and sign this napkin for me too? And he signed the napkin. So I have the napkin from the Yorktown Hotel in York, Pennsylvania. And I can say I actually had a chance to spend a lot of time with Leon Day, and we talked a lot. And of course, he's passed on. He's one of the ancestors now, but he was certainly a great guy. So, yeah, I had the pleasure of knowing him and getting his history firsthand. All right. So let's see. All right. So let's go. This is going to be my last one for tonight. I'm talking about something that occurred on February the 9th, 1981. Henry Lloyd McHenry, Negro League pitcher for the Kansas City Monarchs, the Black Yankees, the Philadelphia Stars, and other teams died in Brooklyn, New York. And Henry, that's a heck of a name, Henry McHenry. I wonder what his parents were thinking about when they put that name together. So anyway, yeah, he was a great player. And he came through, played with the Kansas City Monarchs, I think in 1929, if I'm correct. Somebody can correct me on that if you're following me. And Henry McHenry. And so now I did feature him in my book on that I did on John Buck O'Neill. And I wrote this book on John Buck O'Neill. I did two versions of it. The second version is the one you might want to get, and it's called John Buck O'Neill, the Rookie, His Words, His Voice. And it was the first ever baseball book to use QR codes. And I sold out of that one yesterday, and I almost sold out of this one when I was down in Stratford, but I still have like maybe a couple left. I had to reorder tonight. And that's Wilbur Bullet Rogan and the Kansas City Monarchs. And I happen to think that Wilbur Bullet Rogan is the greatest all-around baseball player that ever lived. And, you know, if you want to debate me, pick up my book, and you will see that he was every bit as good as Babe Ruth was in his prime. And he had something that Babe Ruth did not have for sure, and that was called speed. Bullet Rogan was an excellent base runner and very fast on the bases. Now, somebody knows that Babe Ruth wasn't that fast on the bases, right? So anyway, guys, that kind of gives you a little bit of idea of what we do here. I come on almost nightly. Now, I'm going to go and I'm going to share some information in a little bit. I just have to sit down here and put these pictures together that I took yesterday. And I took some video driving down. Now, if you live in the East Coast, now you're in Baltimore. I don't know how the roads are in Baltimore, but in Kansas, the speed limit outside there is like 75 miles per hour. So I was up in New York State last year, and I think it was 55, 60 or something like that. And once you get outside of New York City, but in Kansas, same thing in South Dakota, North Dakota, man, you can really scoot down the road when it's 75 miles per hour. Just need a great vehicle, and the roads are great. Kansas highways are some of the best that I've experienced. I'm going to say some of the worst that I experienced. Missouri is kind of rough. Yeah, Missouri has those kind of highways. You know, you'll be driving along and the car is going great, and you listen to the radio. Then you hit some rough pavement where they've changed the pavement, and all of a sudden you can't hardly hear your radio. Yeah, Missouri's tough. And if you come from Kansas City and you're heading towards Springfield or Joplin, lots of curves. Kansas doesn't have those curves quite like that. And so it's always easy to travel in Kansas. And guys, I've been all over the country driving my car. So if you want to know anything about driving the highways, just let me know. I can tell you some tips there. So, and here's the other thing. I want to close with this because I usually try to get out of here in about 20 minutes, and I'm at 18 right now. But I don't know if anyone who's barnstormed more than I have to tell this story. When I say barnstorming, I'm talking about going all over the country by car to small cities, to big towns. I've been there and done that. And yesterday, it wasn't a big town to go down to Stratford. They had been looking for me, and they were eager for me to come there. And, you know, when I pulled into town, I got out to take some pictures, and in the downtown, they were playing like oldies rock, you know, like the 70s stuff. And it was like on speakers right in the downtown. I thought that was kind of interesting. And I got there right around noon, and then I could hear the church bells ringing. And then when the church bells stopped, then this other music came on, and everybody, you know, seemed like they're pleasantly enjoying it. So I thought it was different because I every time you go to a different city, you see something different, especially these small towns. And so some of these small towns just really suffered with the changing economy and things like that. But a lot of the historical societies have remained strong. One other thing that I noticed too, when I went into the back of the historical society, they had a lot of bound newspapers. So I asked the lady, I said, have these been put on microfilm? And she said, not all of them. So there's actually newspapers there that probably has information with which I would have liked to have gone through. And maybe one of these days, maybe I can get back down there and go through some of these bound editions and who knows. But I've seen this before. I was in Excelsior Springs and they had bound editions down in the basement of the historical society that had never been microfilmed. And so there's a lot of information that is out there and stories that are yet to be told, guys. So that's what I want to end with tonight. I do want to say thank you for all of your support. If you pick this broadcast up later on, be sure and subscribe because that's where the fun begins. And when you come in, just let me know where you're subscribing from. And so I want to thank a person who let me know they were listening from Baltimore tonight. Certainly appreciate that. So, guys, thank you. You have a nice evening, and I will see you real soon with another edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. You have a nice day. This is Phil Dixon signing out for now, but we'll be back because this conversation can't end anytime soon.